All right, everyone, it's time for more insect news today. If you aren't already subscribed on Rumble, please jump over there and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Uh, Big news today, bubonic plague strikes Colorado. Plague is back. This happens every couple of years, so nothing to be too alarmed about. Plague is a bacterial infection that affects many kinds of mammals and occasionally springs up in people, like the Black Death, where it can cause a lot of mortality. But it's generally bubonic plague, that is generally transmitted to humans by fleas. There are other forms of plague that are not transmitted by fleas, but in this case, we're talking about flea-transmitted plague. So how this usually goes is Yersinia pestis here is the bacteria. It's a bacillus bacteria that is the causative agent of bubonic plague. And in the western United States, this is usually carried by things like prairie dogs. It's pretty common in rodents, which is why Black Death in Europe, the bubonic plague in Europe, was associated with rats. So it's pretty common in rodents. But in the United States out west, it's frequently associated with prairie dogs, but it can also be found in chipmunks and squirrels and things like that. Anything that can harbor a lot of fleas. So bubonic plague usually ends up jumping frequently to children because they are, messing with animal nests or, looking at the prairie dogs and stuff like that, and they end up getting infected. Adults sometimes get infected the same way, but also like they are dealing with dead animals on their property and stuff like that. So generally, you want to stay away from any sort of rodents in the wild, especially if they're already dead, because who knows what killed them. But the interesting entomology part here is that it's transmitted by fleas. So how this works is actually really fascinating. So this is a very zoomed in, kind of out of focus picture of a flea. Fleas are one of the hosts for plague. So generally how this works is plague kind of bounces between a mammal host and the insect host. In this case, this is an oriental rat flea. And so in the mammal host, it causes bubonic plague, where it infects the lymph nodes and causes them to swell. Then you get fever and bleeding and all sorts of things, and then you finally die. But in insects, in particular in this rat flea, what it does is it is still in the blood of the mammalian host that it's been feeding on, and it gets into the digestive system of the flea. So because fleas are so small and relatively see-through, we can actually see the mass of plague inside of them. And it tends to colonize the foregut, the front part, kind of the esophagus portion of the digestive tract, and the midgut, which is more the stomach and intestinal portion of the digestive tract. This big black mass here is plague. And this is bacteria. This is all a big mass of bacteria. And what happens is it forms a biofilm within the flea. So it colonizes the surface of the gut, and then it begins to kind of heap on top of itself until it completely obstructs the ability of the flea to suck in blood for food. And this is actually a really neat adaptation and how it manages to spread to its mammalian host. Eventually, this will completely seal off here, right? So let's get rid of all this. So eventually this digestive tract, the flea has a siphon mouth part, so this has this needle mouth part, and it sucks up food into its digestive tract. And eventually this entire digestive tract will be blocked off by the bacteria. So now the flea begins to starve. And Yersinia pestis infections, this plague infection in fleas, can kill the flea because it can cause the flea to starve to death eventually. But this bacterial biofilm completely blocks off the digestive tract. So now, if the flea wants to feed, let's say it finds another host, let's change colors here. So it finds another, or probably not orange, too much orange on this picture. It finds another human or another rat or whatever, and it's on its skin. And it's like, oh, I want to feed on this mammal and gets a blood meal. It sticks its mouth parts in, but it can't feed because it's completely blocked up with this Yersinia pestis. So it forces itself to vomit, and it regurgitates all of this plague into the wound. And that is how people and animals get infected with plague, through this flea vomit. And now, because it's regurgitated this big chunk of biofilm up, it can feed again. So that it can suck up more blood. This is still completely full of bacteria. The biofilm reforms, and it jumps to its next host and throws up into the wound again, and over. And this is how the flea ends up spreading the plague. So if you are concerned with this, I mean, you really shouldn't be concerned with this, but as general precaution, you want to avoid any sort of flea hotspots. And they even go in the article here. They even go into it. You know, if your dog or cat is infested with fleas, get it treated. Don't let it sleep in your bed. Stay away from dead animals outside. Stay away from rodent nests, things like that. Anywhere where fleas could be harbored, and you'll be fine. But this shows up every few years. There's always an earth-shattering article on it. You know, a 10-year-old child gets plague in Arizona or something. This disease now is entirely treatable with antibiotics, so it's not a big deal. It's not a death sentence as long as they can diagnose you. But just be aware that this is out there. Thanks so much.